Mermaids and other marine monsters. With most of our blue planet covered by water, it's little wonder that, centuries ago, the oceans were believed to hide mysterious creatures including sea serpents and mermaids. Merfolk, mermaids and mermen, are, of course, the marine version of half-human, half-animal legends that have captured human imagination for ages. One source, the Arabian Nights, described mermaids as having moon faces and hair like a woman's, but their hands and feet were in their bellies and they had tails like fishes. C.J.S. Thompson, a former curator at the Royal College of Surgeons of England, notes in his book The Mystery and Lore of Monsters that traditions concerning creatures half human and half fish in form have existed for thousands of years, and the Babylonian deity Ra or Owens, the fish god, is usually depicted as having a bearded head with a crown and a body like a man, but from the waist downwards he has the shape of a fish. Greek mythology contains stories of the god Triton, the Merman messenger of the sea, and several modern religions including Hinduism and Kandaml, an Afro-Brazilian belief, worship mermaid goddesses to this day. Many children are perhaps most familiar with the Disney version of The Little Mermaid, a somewhat sanitized version of a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale first published in 1837. In some legends from Scotland and Wales, mermaids befriended and even married humans. Mary Lau, in her book Seduction and the Secret Power of Women, notes that in the Shetland Islands, mermaids are stunningly beautiful women who live under the sea. Their hybrid appearance is temporary, the effect being achieved by donning the skin of a fish. They must be very careful not to lose this while wandering about on land, because without it they would be unable to return to their underwater realm. In folklore, mermaids were often associated with misfortune and death, luring errant sailors off course and even onto rocky shoals. The terrifying mermaids in the 2011 film Pirates of the Caribbean, on Stranger Tides are closer to the legendary creatures than is Disney's Ariel. Though not as well known as their comely female counterparts, there are of course mermen, and they have an equally fierce reputation for summoning storms, sinking ships and drowning sailors. One especially feared group, the Blue Men of the Minch, are said to dwell in the Outer Hebrides off the coast of Scotland. They look like ordinary men, from the waist up anyway, with the exception of their blue-tinted skin and grey beards. Local lore claims that before laying siege to a ship, the Blue Men often challenge its captain to a rhyming contest. If the captain is quick enough of wit and agile enough of tongue, he can best the Blue Men and save his sailors from a watery grave. Japanese legends have a version of merfolk called kappa. Said to reside in Japanese lakes, coasts and rivers, these child-size water spirits appear more animal than human, with simian faces and tortoise shells on their backs. Like the Blue Men, the kappas sometimes interact with humans and challenge them to games of skill in which the penalty for losing is death. Kappa are said to have an appetite for children and those foolish enough to swim alone in remote places, but they especially prize fresh cucumbers. Real mermaids. The reality of mermaids was assumed during medieval times, when they were depicted matter-of-factly alongside known aquatic animals such as whales. Hundreds of years ago, sailors and residents in coastal towns around the world told of encountering the sea maidens. One story dating back to the 1600s claimed that a mermaid had entered Holland through a dike, and was injured in the process. She was taken to a nearby lake and soon nursed back to health. She eventually became a productive citizen, learning to speak Dutch, perform household chores, and eventually converted to Catholicism. Another mermaid encounter once offered as a true story is described in Edward Snow's Incredible Mysteries and Legends of the Sea. A sea captain off the coast of Newfoundland described his 1614 encounter. Captain John Smith of Jamestown fame saw a mermaid swimming about with all possible grace. He pictured her as having large eyes, a finely shaped nose that was somewhat short, and well-formed ears that were rather too long. Smith goes on to say that her long green hair imparted to her an original character that was by no means unattractive. In fact, Smith was so taken with this lovely woman that he began to experience the first effects of love as he gazed at her before his sudden, and surely profoundly disappointing, realization that she was a fish from the waist down. Surrealist painter René Magritte depicted a sort of reverse mermaid in his 1949 painting The Collective Invention. By the 1800s, hoaxers churned out fake mermaids by the dozen to satisfy the public's interest in the creatures. The great showman P.T. Barnum displayed the Fiji mermaid in the 1840s and it became one of his most popular attractions. Those paying 50 cents hoping to see a long-limbed, fish-tailed beauty comb her hair were surely disappointed. Instead they saw a grotesque fake corpse a few feet long. It had the torso, head, and limbs of a monkey and the bottom part of a fish. To modern eyes it was an obvious fake, but it fooled and intrigued many at the time. Modern mermaids. Could there be a scientific basis for the mermaid stories? Some researchers believe that sightings of human-sized ocean animals such as manatees and dugongs might have inspired merfolk legends. These animals have a flat, mermaid-like tail and two flippers that resemble stubby arms. They don't look exactly like a typical mermaid or merman, of course, but many sightings were from quite a distance away, and being mostly submerged in water and waves, only parts of their bodies were visible. Identifying animals in water is inherently problematic, since eyewitnesses by definition are only seeing a small part of the creature. When you add in the factor of low light at sunset and the distances involved, positively identifying even a known creature can be very difficult. A glimpse of a head, arm, or tail just before it dives under the waves might have spawned some mermaid reports. Modern mermaid reports are very rare, but they do occur. For example, news reports in 2009 claimed that a mermaid had seen sighted off the coast of Israel in the town of Kiryat Yam. It, or she, performed a few tricks for onlookers just before sunset, then disappearing for the night. One of the first people to see the mermaid, Shlomo Cohen, said, "I was with friends when suddenly we saw a woman laying on the sand in a weird way. At first I thought she was just another sunbather, but when we approached she jumped into the water and disappeared. We were all in shock because we saw she had a tail." The town's tourism board was delighted with their newfound fame and offered a $1 million reward for the first person to photograph the creature. Unfortunately, the reports vanished almost as quickly as they surfaced, and no one ever claimed the reward. In 2012, an Animal Planet special, Mermaids, The Body Found, renewed interest in mermaids. It presented the story of scientists finding proof of real mermaids in the oceans. It was fiction but presented in a fake documentary format that seemed realistic. The show was so convincing that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration received enough inquiries following the TV special that they issued a statement officially denying the existence of mermaids. A temple in Fukuoka, Japan, is said to house the remains of a mermaid that washed ashore in 1222. Its bones were preserved at the behest of a priest who believed the creature had come from the legendary palace of a dragon god at the bottom of the ocean. For nearly 800 years the bones have been displayed, and water used to soak the bones was said to prevent diseases. Only a few of the bones remain, and since they have not been scientifically tested, their true nature remains unknown. Mermaids may be ancient, but they are still with us in many forms. Their images can be found all around us in films, books, Disney movies, at Starbucks, and maybe even in the ocean waves if we look close enough.